This is Sandeep Thanki from Procure Evolve. In this video, we are going to discuss a very important topic about impacts of geopolitical tensions on the global supply chains. So let us understand first of all what is supply chain and what we mean by geopolitical tensions. Supply chain is a complex network through which goods and services are produced and provided to the doorstep of the consumer. It includes the entire chain of operations involved in sourcing the input raw materials, manufacturing the product and delivering the goods to the consumer. So this is what the supply chain is. Size of the supply chain depends on the kind of business as well as the size of business. Based on the size and the kind of business, the supply chains can be local as well as global. So now talking about the geopolitical tensions. What do we mean by geopolitical tensions? So geopolitical tension is a situation where two or more countries come into a conflicting situation, or it may be a political turmoil or turmoil of any sort within the country, which eventually impacts the entire economics, the geopolitics in the region. We will cite some example of geopolitical tensions in recent past or ongoing. One is of course, as we have mentioned, the war between Russia and Ukraine. The another example is the trade war between US and China. One more example could be the tensions between South and North Korea. Another example could be the political tensions between Iran, Saudi Arabia and USA. So there are various geopolitical issues which are surfacing at present in the world, and all these geopolitical events affects the global supply chain in a massive way. So what kind of impact this kind of geopolitical tensions creates on the global supply chain? See, in this kind of turmoil situation, the first thing happens is in the economies, in the market, in the investor lobby, there is a fear of unknown. No one actually knows as to what's going to happen next. So this kind of uncertainty affects the policies of government. Government changes their policies in order to counter this situation or potential risk they might encounter due to such geopolitical developments. So in turn, this political change impacts the consumption cycle of the market. People working in the economy, their job gets destabilized. They also feel a kind of panic situation. So their buying behavior changes. So consumption cycle gets affected. Of course, due to this kind of geopolitical tensions, inflation rises. And what do government do to counter inflation? We all know. Government increases the interest rates. So it again has the impact on the cost of sourcing, cost of manufacturing, cost of delivering goods. So this everything put together muddles the entire supply chain. One more thing which impacts the supply chain in a great way, and that is blockages of various supply chain routes. So many ports, so many supply chain routes might undergo changes. Apart from this, so many manufacturing facilities may get dislocated and may find new locations. Maybe in new country, new geography. So these all factors, and there can be many more factors. It depends on the what kind of business, what kind of product, what kind of supply chain and what kind of geopolitical tensions are on the cards. It all depends on that. So now when geopolitical tensions are affecting the supply chain massively, then the next question arises, what kind of actions the business organizations should take in order to counter this kind of geopolitical tensions. To start with, the first action the organizations will have to take is obviously monitor this kind of geopolitical tensions. Yes, most of the businesses they focus on technical aspects, commercial aspects, performance of the vendor, and various other aspects. Many of the organizations they overlook grossly the geopolitical developments. So first of all, we have to monitor the geopolitical situations which might impact our supply chain and business. Second thing is we have to meticulously identify the risks involved due to these geopolitical tensions taking place. How do we identify this kind of risks? Identify your suppliers in these tensed geopolitical areas. Don't stop there. Also go deep in the supply chain and find out whether your sub-vendors, your contractor, that is subcontractors, do they have any exposure to this? Don't limit yourself to identify this kind of risks in the downside of the supply chain, that is sourcing side of the supply chain. Also dig deep in the distribution side of the supply chain. Try to find out what kind of impact this kind of geopolitical tensions might have on your distribution network. If you fail to do so, your factory may be flooded with inventories. Your entire calculations of produced inventory and finances may go for a toss. Third thing is measure the risk. After identifying the risks, the next step is to measure the risk involved. One can classify the risks in whether no impact, minor impact, major impact, or a catastrophic impact, which might bring your operations at standstill. After monitoring, identifying, and measuring the risk, the next step is to check out the counter strategies. Now, counter strategies will have to be developed based on the type of the risk, the impact it might have on your business. It's a very detailed exercise the organizations will have to do. If you can avoid the geopolitical risk, try to avoid it. But if you cannot avoid it, if there are certain calculated risks which the organizations will have to take, at that time the organizations must have the robust counter strategy if in case the geopolitical tensions comes into play. The next thing the organizations will have to do is spread your sourcing network. Don't limit your sourcing network for critical items, the leverage items in the geopolitically tensed areas. Even if the area is not geopolitically tensed at present, this is a kind of a risk which the seasoned sourcing and procurement or seasoned operational guy at times won't be able to gauge. So the wise thing to do is spread your sourcing network across the globe. Develop multiple options. Develop new vendors. Don't limit yourself to 5, 6. Always be in a process of developing new vendors in different geographies. The next thing is one has to learn how to deal in the multiple currencies. See, we all know US dollar is no more a global currency. Now people will have to understand the importance of contracts dealing in multiple currencies. And when we are dealing in multiple currencies, we will have to have strategies of hedging various financial risks involved while dealing in multiple currencies. Also, motivate your team members to learn about the culture, learn about the languages, learn about the customs of various geographies in the world. You never know when you have to go and do business in different geographies. You never know when you will be compelled to deal with new set of vendors, new set of culture, new set of geographies. You might have to deal with them in their language, At least you should have the basic knowledge about their culture, their customs. It helps a lot. Next thing is, now it's a time. We cannot depend on global banks. We will have to understand the operational aspects of certain local banks in the critical geographies of the world. Like if you are compelled to work in Vietnam, you must know what kind of banking system that country has, what kind of financial system is prevailing in that country, what kind of local regulations are there, what kind of local laws you have to abide by. So this kind of things, if you are aware of, it makes your transition from the tensed geography, your sourcing and your supply chain from the tensed geography to the new geography. It helps you to have this bumpless migration from the tensed situation to relatively smoother situation. Also, when we talk about this subject, we all know that we have evolved and we all have been very comfortable with just-in-time inventory model. Now it's high time to migrate from just-in-time to just-in-case model of inventories. Depending on the risk that have been identified in your supply chain, the inventory models will have to be transformed from the just-in-time to just-in-case. What if in case you are encountering certain risks which are triggered by geopolitical matters? One more critical actions which organizations will have to initiate is to make agile processes. To sum up whatever we have discussed, this everything can be put into operation only when your organization has the agile processes. What do we mean by agile processes in this context? Agile processes, we mean that when this kind of risk gets triggered, your organization must have internal processes where the sourcing and procurement team, where the operational team, where the marketing team, this entire functions will have to have an SOP to deal with this kind of situation, that is to migrate from X area to Y area, to migrate from X set of vendors to Y set of vendors, to migrate from X kind of financial systems to Y kind of a financial system, to migrate from X kind of currency hedging and models to maybe multi-currency models. So your internal approval cycle, your internal authorities, your internal delegation of authorities, everything will have to be designed in such a way that if you have to encounter this kind of geopolitical situations, it must support your business operations seamlessly. So this is what are the short strategies or counter strategies, you may call it, to counter the geopolitical tensions. If your company is encountering or forcing such impacts or want to mitigate such risk or want to design a business process wherein this kind of factors are taken into account, you can utilize our experience in this field. We are leaving our contacts in the description box. Have a great time. Goodbye.